up now with Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack, and also welcoming Greg Steube. He's also a member of the Florida Congressional Delegation. Thanks so much for being with us, both of you. We appreciate the time.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Congresswoman Cammack, first to you. Only 5 Republican senators voted to proceed with the impeachment trial last night. Now, should the Democrats just cut their losses and get back to their day jobs? I mean, their day jobs could be the COVID relief bill, let's say. We heard about this motion to censure. Is that something you might support if, let's say, Democrats really to give up on the trial?
It's perfect example today. I'm crisscrossing my district in North Central Florida, visiting all of the vaccination sites that we have, dealing with COVID and talking to small business owners and seniors. That's what people should be focusing on. That's what the Democrats in Washington should be focusing on, not this sham impeachment that's doing more to divide our country than unite it. We need to get busy working on the things that our constituents sent us to Washington to do. And we know that this is just pure politics at its finest. I mean, what's next? Are we going to impeach former presidents because their values are no longer in vogue? I mean, this sets a very dangerous precedent. And so we need to be focused on the things that are actually affecting our constituents every day, not this sham impeachment that the Democrats are trying to ram through.
And the things, Congressman Steube, that Democrats told us they were going to focus on immediately after Joe Biden was sworn in, things they talked about during the Georgia Senate runoffs, things a bit like the COVID relief bill. Yet here they are. We see them walking through the halls of Congress in a very ceremonial fashion, but they're not working on COVID relief.
No, they can't. The Constitution strictly lays out that once the articles of impeachment have been transferred to the Senate, they have to focus on the impeachment until that impeachment vote has been resolved. So it could be 2 weeks in the U.S. Senate before we see COVID legislation, or they're even talking about COVID legislation. And now what Mr. Kaine said, if the impeachment, which doesn't sound like it's going to be successful, fails, now they're going to be focusing on a censure. So when they've said all these things that they wanted to focus on to unite our country, and in fact, they're doing the opposite, and they're not even looking at COVID relief, which is something that the Biden White House wants them to do, because they have to focus on the impeachment until it's done, and they have to run a trial. So they could call as many witnesses as they want to. The defense counsels could call witnesses if they want to. It could go on a week or 2 weeks like it did the first time they attempted to impeach him.
Yeah, and again, the American public will have to watch all this play out as we still see the COVID situation seemingly, get worse, if not get worse, not get better, at least. I also wanted to talk to you guys, too, about new calls for Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene to resign. This all is based on old social media posts that have resurfaced. The gun control advocacy group Everytown for Gun Safety is calling for her to step down. This after hundreds of Facebook posts and comments resurfaced in which Greene advocated for violence against several prominent Democrats. This is according to CNN and to Media Matters. And in 2019, Greene liked a comment from someone that wrote, quote, "A bullet to the head would be quicker to remove House Speaker Nancy Pelosi." What are you guys hearing about this, Congresswoman Cammack?
Well, I mean, this is a complete distraction from what is happening, boots on the ground, things happening here at home. But I mean, I think we can all agree that violence against anyone calling for violence across the board should be condemned. But let us not forget that it hasn't been too long ago that we were hearing calls for violence from the left against members of the Republican Party. But again, we need to move past all of this. This is just a distraction from the real work that needs to be getting done in Washington and here at home in our home states and districts. I think that violence that we've seen in the past 3.5 weeks has been disgusting. I've received death threats. I think every member of Congress has received death threats. It's a disgrace. It's doing nothing to serve the American people. We need to move on.
Yeah, I think a lot of us want to see the temperature get turned down. Here is a statement that Greene released on Twitter. She denies that she liked the post, or did not deny that she liked the post and replied to comments, but claimed many people have run her Facebook page in the past. Here's what she said, quote, "Fake news, CNN is writing yet another hit piece on me focused on my time before running for political office. I will never back down to the enemy of the American people, and neither should you." Now, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Congressman Steube, says he plans to speak with Greene, but isn't this a matter that should be left up to Greene's constituents?
Yeah, I was going to say she's accountable to the people in her district every 2 years. And if these were comments that were made before she was elected, obviously they had the opportunity to go through her Twitter and Facebook. Look, I condemn anybody calling for violence against any person, but we also have to condemn thoughts and actions and words that Speaker Pelosi said, that all Republicans are enemies of the state and domestic terrorists. Those are also words that should also be taken down. So why isn't CNN focusing on Democrats claiming that Republicans were doing reconnaissance missions for the people that went into the Capitol the day before to let them give a layout with absolutely no evidence whatsoever to prove that a single member of Congress did that? So there is language on both sides of the aisles. I don't ever say things like that. I don't think we should be, as members of Congress, calling for violence. But this was something that she said before she got elected, and she's accountable to the people of her district for it.
We'll see where this goes. There's something else, too, we got to talk about is how far is the left really going to push some of these initiatives? You know, a lot of people looking at this Washington, D.C. 51st state issue as maybe the first sign of that they're going to try to tip the scales in their favor. This, of course, would give Democrats 2 more senators. And Delaware Senator Tom Carper introduced a bill this morning to make Washington, D.C. our 51st state. Congresswoman Cammack, you know, what happens if they continue to push this?
It's a disaster, and there's absolutely no place for Washington to become a state. It was designed that way. The center of power should not have 2 additional senators and representatives there. It is the seat of our government, and making D.C. a state is just a roadmap for further disaster to occur in our government. We need to absolutely be focusing on things, like I said, that matter. COVID relief. We've got record unemployment. We have millions of people that are out of work. Small businesses are going under. I don't understand why people cannot turn around and focus on the things that Americans have been begging and pleading for us to look at. We know that making D.C. a state is not good for our country. It's not good for the future of our kids. And so, again, why is Nancy Pelosi canceled votes for the second week in February? It's because they don't have a plan. They're trying to distract us from the real issues that are at hand that we are trying to settle and resolve for our constituents.
It certainly does seem like they have a lack of confidence in the American electorate, even though they won the White House this last time around. You know, trying to make D.C. a state or Puerto Rico a state, Congressman Steube, blowing up the filibuster, packing the courts. These are all, you know, policies that the Democrats want to push because they don't have the votes to really do the things they want, like the Green New Deal.
Yeah, and if Manchin stays true for his word as not doing away with the filibuster, they're going to need 60 votes, which means they're going to need 10 Republicans to vote for this. It's clear in our Constitution that the D.C. area is not to become a state, and it was done purposely by the framers of our Constitution that way, so that the seat of our federal government wouldn't be inflicted or pushed on by local officials or a governor or state officials, that it would be the D.C. area for the housing of our federal government. So it's clear in the Constitution, which they don't care about the Constitution. They just want 2 more votes in the U.S. Senate, another member of Congress to vote with the Democrats. This is 100% completely political partisan politics.
And I think a lot of people see right through these moves, and even some Democrats, you know, they can understand the Schadenfreude here that they are up to. Might be some upset people if they actually push this stuff through it. Congressman Cammack, great to see you as always. Congressman Steube, thank you so much for your time as well. We'll talk to you both